I think we've entered a pretty good timeline when it comes to Godzilla media. Not only is America making some very solid Godzilla films, but Toho is also getting experimental with Godzilla as well. We have films like Shin Godzilla, which became as popular and as well respected as Godzilla in 1954. We got the anime trilogy, which is divisive, probably as divisive as Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and a full-blown anime series featuring the returns of classic favorites like Manga, Manda, Jet Jaguar, and even Anguinus. On the other side of the world, we had one of the greatest cinematic rematches and the sequel to Citizen Kane. So yeah, we've been getting a fair amount of decent good Godzilla content. However, we're also getting a bunch of new Godzilla fans as well as some old ones resurging from the depths. So yeah, this timeline of Godzilla is actually really good. Which is good because Godzilla was in a very long 10-year hiatus. In 2004, Godzilla Final Wars was his final movie for the time being. Afterwards, he, along with a bunch of other kaiju media, stayed dormant in the ground. However, in 2013, Guillermo del Toro released Pacific Rim, starting a kaiju renaissance. And in 2014, Gareth Edwards released Godzilla. Godzilla 2014 is an interesting movie to talk about, mainly because of its status. Not only is it the first Godzilla movie to come out in 10 years, but it was also the second American Godzilla movie, right after Godzilla in 1998. And whilst Pacific Rim started the kaiju renaissance, Godzilla 2014 pushed it even further. And with it, a new era of Godzilla. Barely anyone talks about it. Yeah, after the movie came out, barely anyone talked about it, and even when people talk about it, they talk about it in a negative light. Usually bringing up how there's not enough kaiju fight scenes, and the human characters are bland, and it's too dark when the fight scenes happen, and yada yada yada. However, after me watching the movie not once, but twice, I think this movie is super underrated. In fact, dare I say, I think this might be the second best MonsterVerse movie. But why do I think that a monster movie with barely any monsters in it is better than a monster movie with a lot of monsters in it? Why don't I just tell you about the movie? Let's start with the credit sequence, because like Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla 2014 also starts with a credit sequence. However, unlike Godzilla vs. Kong, where Godzilla vs. Kong's credit sequence is big and bombastic, this one is different. A little bit more realistic. I'm not saying like, oh, it looks real, but it's not real. I mean that it feels real and looks real. And this is the main thing I want to talk about when it comes to Godzilla 2014. Its atmosphere. This is going to be something I'm going to talk about with the whole movie, but right now it's for this credit sequence specifically. Unlike Godzilla vs. Kong, where it was very bright and very colorful, Godzilla 2014 has a lot of grays and it's all gritty and dirty. The music is also different. Unlike in Godzilla vs. Kong, where it's big and bombastic, Godzilla 2014 is a little bit more foreboding. Heck, even the title card is different. This is Godzilla vs. Kong's. And this is Godzilla 2014's. Cold, empty, soft. That's Godzilla 2014's credit sequence. sequence. I actually really like this credit sequence a lot more than Godzilla vs. Kong. It not only gets the tone across, but it's also really well done and really well edited. Yeah, sure, Godzilla vs. Kong's was also well edited, but Godzilla 2014 has a sense of class. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It has a sense of class to it. The movie also has a sense of realism, which I think that's what the director is going for, given that's pretty much going to be the entire movie from this point onward. Oh yeah, this is a movie review. Frick. So our movie starts on a helicopter being flown over the Philippines. In that helicopter, we meet two specific characters. One of them being Dr. Ishiro Zerazawa, and the other one being Dr. Grant. They were flown to the Philippines because of a mining operation that had gone awry. It was so bad that they had to call two of the best scientists into Monarch, which is an organization that deals with giant monsters. However, they were called for a different reason.
Dr. Zerazawa? Jerry Boyd, I'm just warning you, it's a mess. Just a total mess. Monarch sent me in this morning. Quick look around, I told them we needed you. They picked up a radiation pocket out here last month. They got excited thinking they had a uranium deposit. They started stacking up the heavy machinery and then, well, the valley floor collapsed into a cavern below. Just dropped away, just gone. Best guess right now is about 40 miners went down with it.
Jesus H. Christ, that's a lot of kids. Inside this hole, they find a giant corpse of a kaiju. And there are a few specific things that the crew notices about this kaiju, like how radiation levels have risen exponentially.
When they first discovered this pocket, the radiation levels were only half as strong. It's almost as if contact with the outside air started catalyzing something.
How this might be a much older version of another species of monster they've been studying.
Is it him?
No, this is much older.
Foreshadowing. I like that. And finally, the fact that there are two giant eggs in the middle of this giant beast's own carcass. However, whilst one spore has yet to be hatched, the other spore right next to it is broken. And whatever nightmarish creature came out of that spore also escaped from the kaiju and onto the ground, as well as into the sea. But where could this strange monster be heading? Well, you have to start somewhere, I guess. We then arrive in Japan to see the Brody family. We have Small Brody, Woman Brody, and Bryan Cranston Brody. However, Bryan Cranston Brody is a very busy man, and he doesn't even know it's his birthday today.
Happy birthday.
What? Is it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, I forgot all about it.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I should have a birthday more.
Aw, what a nice family. Too bad it's gonna end soon. So while Bryan Cranston and his wife work at the power plant, things start to go... Remember when I said all of the nice things are gonna end soon? Well, apparently there are some very specific patterns that are happening at this very specific power plant that both Bryan Cranston and his wife are currently working at. And apparently this is the only power plant that this very specific event is happening at. All other power plants in Japan are unaffected. And thus that catastrophic event starts in 3, 2, 1.
Take us offline.
Now, Joe, we gotta talk
Do it
about
now. Wind it down.
JANJIRA, mi piso runda.
Sandra? Sandra, you there?
We're turning back. Let's go. Oh my God. Joe, are you there?
Okay, but in all seriousness, this scene is actually really good. Not only does this scene build a lot of tension for both Joe and his wife, but it's also the first action scene that doesn't involve giant monsters. The acting, the music, the sets, it all works here. But what really does this scene is the climax. That's because Joe's wife is still in the room where all the smoke, the radioactive smoke, is coming from. So Joe goes to save his wife from the chaos. However, when he gets there, the wife has not yet come. Yet Joe still waits for her, praying that she does get out at some point in time. But whilst Joe is waiting, the wife is still running from the demonic smoke. And yet at some point she and another colleague falls, and then the wife tries to help her colleague, but she then gets caught up in the smoke. But then Joe gets a call from his coworker saying to seal the door, because if he doesn't seal the door, the nuclear radiation will affect the entire area. But Joe still hopes that his wife still comes first. He tells her, just run, keep running, but his wife tells him no, she won't make it. But then the smoke comes first, and Bryan Cranston had no choice but to close the door. But after he closes that door, he then turns around, and he sees his colleagues behind that door, pleading for dear life, begging for him to reopen it. But then he sees his wife for the last time, with her final words being, and then the door closes, sealing all the fate of everyone who was in that very room. This scene is freaking good. Not only is this scene well done, but it's also well acted as well. Both Bryan Cranston and the actress do a great job at portraying the fear and distress that these characters are feeling. It's a really well done scene, and all I'm thinking now is, where was this in Godzilla vs. Kong? This is what the film was missing. Characters. Well done, well written characters. It really is shocking how this first movie did characters better than the current movie right now. Oh, and keep in mind, we haven't seen a single kaiju yet. Aside from the dead one in the beginning, we have yet to see a giant monster in this movie. This movie can actually keep you entertained without the need of a giant monster. And even after that scene, we still get some horrifying imagery of the power plant falling apart, and even scenes of stuff happening outside of the chaos as well, like a school that Small Brody is at being evacuated. But while that's all happening, Small Brody, who is actually named Ford Brody, sees the destruction outside, and he has a look of horror and sheer confusion. Again, no giant monsters whatsoever, and yet this scene shows enough destruction to not even warrant a giant monster. We then see Ford, 15 years later, leaving a military aircraft from war, probably. He returns from 14 months in the service to finally meet his family, and his family celebrates his return. They even have a cake and everything. It's so wholesome.
That's you, and that's me.
What's it say?
Welcome home, Daddy.
Daddy's home.
Daddy's home.
Cake every night.
Oh, so that's why I don't get cake every night. But for real though, this scene is actually really nice. Especially after the horrors we witnessed in the beginning. However, the happiness has to stop because the Japanese consulate calls the Brody family saying they have Bryan Cranston Brody, and they arrested him for trespassing on the very nuclear site that killed his wife, and he has to pick him up. So Ford packs his things, he talks to his wife, and heads off to Tokyo. So Ford and Joe returned to Joe's messed up apartment. He was actually studying the events that happened on the very day that his wife died in the nuclear power plant. And his apartment definitely shows that. We also learned between this interaction between Joe and Ford that Ford defuses bombs in the army. However, this is pretty much the only thing we know about Ford because Ford kinda sucks. I mean, Ford isn't a terrible character. He's just kinda bland.
This was not Dad!
Oh, and the actor doesn't make it better either. But I can somewhat forgive it because the character itself isn't terrible, and the movie itself isn't terrible. So after Joe and Ford argue about the power plant situation, and after a little heart-to-heart scene, Joe reluctantly decides to go with Ford back to San Francisco, only for him to say fuck it and trespass to the power plant anyway, with Ford tagging along, of course. However, once they get to the quarantined area, something feels off. Now, the reason why this was quarantined in the first place is due to the levels of radiation. However, when Joe pulls out his radioactive detector thingy, it's at 0.000. Meaning that this place is entirely clean.
Hey, what are you doing? Dad?
It's clean. I knew it.
So yeah, something is obviously up. They then reach their old home, where Joe finds his disc, a picture of his family, a funny little in-joke, and a grim reminder of that fateful day. Feels like home already. However, after a little while, the duo hears some helicopters outside in the distance. However, when the duo reach the outside, they realize that the helicopter is going to the very power plant. Or what's left of it.
I don't know. I haven't seen...
Well, shit. So our duo gets captured and put in a car, and are then driven to the power plant. Well, calling it a power plant is putting it lightly. I would rather say a holding cell for an unknown object. That being this giant, big-ass, red pulsating cocoon thing. And the team over at Monarch are studying this strange thing.
7.2 seconds and getting stronger. We're trending exponentially. That's our new curve.
Jesus, it's worse than we thought.
Excuse me, Dr. Sarazawa? 2 men were just arrested in the Q zone.
We've got bigger problems here. Have Dr. Graham take a look.
She did, sir. She sent me. One of them says he used to work here, Doctor.
So Dr. Sarazawa is led to where Joe Ford is being held and interrogated. And just like in the scene in the power plant, Bryan Cranston does an excellent job at playing this character. He's clearly giving it his all, and I can definitely believe his character. He doesn't feel like a fucking tool. He actually feels like a character that forwards the story. You can actually hear the desperation in his voice.
My wife died here! Something killed my wife! And I have a right to know! I deserve answers!
In fact, aside from Ford Brody, everyone does a really good job portraying their characters. So it mostly makes up for the lack of kaiju action in this movie. Speaking of which, the lights start to flicker on and off.
You see, there it is again. That is not a transformer malfunction. That is an electromagnetic pulse. It affects everything electrical for miles and miles, and it is happening again. This is what caused everything in the first place. Don't you see that? And it is going to send us back to the Stone Age.
Hey, that's me every time I see the trending tab on Twitter. But actually, this scene perceiving the interrogation is also really well done. This one also builds suspense, but unlike the first scene where the suspense is if Joe's wife will survive, this time it's what's in this cocoon. Because whilst the cocoon starts breaking into pieces, the Monarch team tries to secure it, contain it, and to make sure it doesn't hatch at all. And just like the first scene, it also builds a sense of dread and a sense of confusion. And we haven't even seen the monster inside it yet. So after all the preparations and chaos, Dr. Zarazawa orders the team to
Kill it.
To which the team unanimously, if not reluctantly, replies. Jesus, whatever the hell's in there, it's gotta be good. So after a shit ton of electric stimulation, the beast is presumably dead. Or is it? Even after death, the creature still wants more chaos and destruction. And I honestly enjoy the second half much more than the first. Not only does it give off some horror movie vibes, but the special effects are actually really good. Plus, I also like the creature's design here. It's a simple and, furthermore, straightforward design. I don't know, I just really like it. However, even during the chaos, we also get to see a few of its abilities, like the use of an EMP attack and the power to fly. So all in all, a pretty formidable, if not terrifying creature. And plus this scene leads to some really good shots and really horrifying moments. This includes stuff like the creature pulling the wires down, thus pulling the cranes down, causing a chain reaction, destroying more stuff, and killing tons and tons of people. And I do mean tons, cause right off the bat, this thing has a flippin' body count. Not only killing people in the process, either intentionally or unintentionally, but also causing even more destruction as well. Oh, and in the process, severely injuring Joe Brody. And a pretty solid scene of the creature getting out of its containment cell while staring down at Ford Brody. I don't know, I just really like this shot of the creature just looking at Ford. And even after it comes out of its containment cell, it still rampages onward, causing a lot more destruction, and at some point even stepping on somebody. The kaiju stuff doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, it is good. Heck, we even get to see a first-person point of view of the rampage as well. And also keep in mind, we haven't even seen the title character yet, and we still got some good kaiju action. Why do people dismiss this movie again? So after the great JANJIRA kaiju massacre of 2014, leaving thousands dead and probably even more injured, a military guy talks to Zarazawa and is like, hey yo, listen, so you know this kaiju thing? Yeah, we're gonna be taking over it because obviously you don't know what you're doing. You dumb idiot. Also, do you want to take 2 people? To which Dr. Zarazawa looks at our family Ford duo and says, and are being flown somewhere. We don't know where yet, but it's somewhere. And during this scene, Ford and Joe have their final heart-to-heart conversation. And then Joe goes immediately into cardiac arrest. We then arrive at the USS Saratoga, where we learn about the beast that attacked the power plant.
Muto, massive unidentified terrestrial organism. It is, however, no longer terrestrial, it is airborne.
And we also learn that their goal is to contain it, secure it, and kill it at all cost. And also to make sure that giant monsters don't exist. Meanwhile, in the other room, Bryan Krantz is now considered dead. It's all gonna go downhill from here.
Dr. Sarazawa.
My condolences.
We are deeply sorry for your loss, Lieutenant.
We then get an exposition of everything that's been happening in the past few minutes, including the purpose of Monarch being to study monsters, the creature that attacked the power plant and how it was created and what it will do next, and finally a creature that is similar to the one found in the Philippines, was trying to be killed in the Castle Bravo experiment, and is the alpha predator to the massive unidentified terrestrial organisms. And what do they call this creature?
Godzilla.
Fuck you.
Top of a primordial ecosystem.
So after some stuff about bioacoustics and how Godzilla will bring balance to nature, your boy Ford then gets a helicopter flight to Hawaii so then he can get a commercial flight back to San Francisco. And whilst on that said helicopter flight, he tells his wife that his father is dead. Meanwhile, on the USS Saratoga, Dr. Zarazawa and the crew were looking at the files of the sounds of the Muto was making. And apparently in those calls, something responded.
There. Something responded.
We then cut to Hawaii, and Ford Brody is, well, pretty depressed. After seeing his father die in front of his eyes, all he can do is reminisce on that horrible night. He also pulls out an army figure that he got from his old house in Japan. However, this brings the attention of a little boy who wants to see the army figure a little bit closer. But in doing so, he then gets caught on the wrong train and is left without his parents. But no worries, Ford is a good man, and he promises the parents that he will bring their child back to them. And as an added bonus, he gives the child his old toy. That's very sweet of him. Meanwhile, on the mainland, the army are trying to find the massive, unidentified terrestrial organism before it causes any more damage to any more civilians and whatnot. Thankfully, they find it chowing down on a submarine.
Appears to be rising approximately 20 to 30 meters above the tree line. Can't tell how wide it is.
Cat's out of the bag, Doctor. No more secrets. Our highest priority now is safety. There's close to 1 million people on that island. Give me eyes in the air.
We're picking up something else.
Wait, wasn't the Muto a problem already? Actually, no, because whilst the military is dealing with the Muto problem, strange occurrences not Muto related start to happen, like the ocean going further back than it probably should. Now, who on earth would be doing such a thing like that? Well, whatever this strange creature is, it's causing a flippin' tsunami in Hawaii. Like, holy smokes, people are legitimately dying here. Whatever this thing is, it's causing a hell of a lot of damage, and we haven't even seen it yet. We're boned. Well, maybe we're less boned if that Muto left. You know what, maybe I should just stop talking. So yes, the Muto has made it to the airport, and to add insult to injury, the train is heading straight for it, causing even more damage and chaos in the process. You know, I just realized this is from the same franchise that made a gonorrhea joke in a future movie. So the Muto is rampaging throughout the entire airport. But then, something else comes along. Meanwhile, a pair of fighter pilots try shooting at the beast, but then all of a sudden, some strange spikes come out of frickin' nowhere, and this ultimately leads them to their inevitable demise. Dear God, if fighter pilots can't stop this thing, then I don't know what will stop this thing. Okay. Now we talk about Godzilla. For anyone who has watched my Godzilla vs. Kong review, you might have realized that I've barely even talked about Godzilla at all in the first place. Well, there is a reason for that. I wanted to save talking about this specific incarnation of Godzilla at a later date. Here is that later date. Design-wise, this version of Godzilla works for me. The spines, the tail, the body proportions, it just works for me, honestly. Honestly, it's just my fourth favorite design, right after Heisei, Ultima, and Shin. I think my only gripe with Legendary Goji is that he doesn't really show up in this movie all that much. There's like around 8 minutes of footage with Godzilla, and because he doesn't show up all that much, he doesn't really have a personality. The other two films build on Godzilla's personality a bit more, but what we got here was still pretty good. But I am willing to forgive those flaws, because he has an amazing roar. Oh my god, this roar is so good! Now, obviously, the other Godzilla roars, they're iconic, they can't be beat. But this roar is just so amazing! It's a roar of a true king, and I love it all the same. And it's great use for meme material. And this can also work the other way around. So because of the Great Honolulu Massacre, the people now know monsters exist, and thus the world falls into chaos and despair, with all but a small glimmer of hope for humanity. And it's up to the US Army to stop the rampaging beasts.
I want to get to the mainland.
Well, it's your lucky day, sir. Everything not tied down is moving east.
Oh, is that where they're heading?
Yeah. I guess we're monster hunters now.
Really? Sounds great! I'll bring my greatsword! And thus, both the army and Monarch track the Muto and Godzilla to where they're heading next. As it turns out, the giant monsters are going to the San Francisco Bay Area. And as it also turns out, Godzilla is hunting the Muto. But that doesn't explain the matching call within the pattern. So why would a prey be calling a predator? Unless...
The pattern. Focus the search on Nevada.
Nevada? Why would it go to Nevada?
It can't be. It's impossible.
What's impossible?
There was another spore, intact, found in the Philippine mine. But we vivisected it. Ran every test on it for years. You confirmed it for yourself. It was dormant.
Maybe not anymore.
This spore, where is it now, Doctor?
It was highly radioactive. It was disposed of. The Americans, they took it.
Doctor, where is it?
Where you put all your nuclear waste.
So yes, that dormant spore from the Philippines wasn't actually dormant. It was still alive and kicking. It was just a late baby. And to add insult to injury, the spore was put in Nevada into a place where America puts all its nuclear waste. Well, let's pray to Cthulhu nothing bad happens. And Muto Numero Dos has escaped the Nevada nuclear safe waste thingy. And to make things 10 times worse, this Muto is not only twice as big as the other one we saw, and it is now rampaging through Nevada like an animal on heat. So yeah, we're just having a gay old time. However, we learn a few new things about this new Muto. For one, it's 300 feet tall, 2, it got no wings, and 3, it's actually a female. Yeah, surprisingly enough, we got male and female dimorphism in a kaiju movie, which, fun fact, is actually a thing in real life, with the two most prominent examples being mantids and ammonites. However, the government now has a new problem because now there are 3 Devadam instead of 2 Devadam, and the worst part is that all 3 of them are meeting at the San Francisco Bay. So, their best and only option now is to nuke them all to Kingdom Come, even though they feed on radiation. However, Zarazawa refutes, saying that we should let nature take its course instead of nuking them all to Kingdom Come. But the government decides to go with planned nukes. Oh, and Dr. Zarazawa shows the army man his watch that he got from his father before the nuclear bombs of Hiroshima. And yeah, when the army does transport the nukes, it gets pretty boring. Probably because it takes a long time before they even transport the nukes in the first place. Granted, there are some important things to note here, like how the nukes are worked by clockwork instead of electricity, and that people are evacuating out of California just so then they don't get nuked to Kingdom Come. But to be perfectly honest, it is kind of boring for me. I don't really know why it's mostly boring for me, but it just kind of is. And even when we see a group of soldiers, including the main character, export a bomb, I still don't care. It takes way too long to get going, barely anything interesting happens, and I just really don't care. Granted, some interesting things happen, like a sea of fiery debris and the stuff with the bigger Muto, but otherwise it just gets way too long to get going. Though, thankfully, it all goes up from here. So, after one nuclear bomb transport failed, ending with a fiery train chase, don't worry, Brody's alive, and after a scene of Brody's wife giving her son to her friend just so then the son could live, we finally get some more kaiju action that's worth a damn. And honest to God, it's probably the best part of the movie. The Golden Gate Bridge is experiencing a traffic jam, including a bus full of kids, of which Sam Brody is in it. Meanwhile, the military is preparing to attack, in case one of the kaiju comes to the Golden Gate Bridge. All seems pretty normal, until... So after a flock of Steven Seagals fly away, the omen of death arrives. To be perfectly honest, that was a little bit shit. Oh, wait, nope, not scratch that. That's his tail. That's his tail. Nope, that's his friggin' tail. Oh, dear God. So, yes, Godzilla bamboozled the entire U.S. Navy and is going to destroy the Golden Gate Bridge. And this is my favorite part of the movie. Not only does it use the suspension and confusion tactic as the Muto scene, but it adds a little more chaos to it. You got a bus full of kids trying to get off the bridge before they all die. You got the military attacking the bridge. You got Godzilla destroying the bridge. It's just beautiful. But it's not just beautiful, it's also intense. The army is just wailing on Godzilla, yet he's barely affected by anything, by the railguns, by the tank rounds, just literally anything and everything that's thrown at him. Even though this scene is short, we get to feel the sense and power of Godzilla. We get to see the size of this creature. We get to see what this man is capable of. But I think what makes this scene even more horrifying is the reaction of the children. Now, to make you understand what I'm trying to say, let's use a film that you've never heard of by the name of Yongari. This film has a scene of a giant fire-breathing monster attacking a school bus full of children on a bridge. Let's compare the two scenes side by side of the kids' reaction to being attacked by a giant monster. tell the difference is night and day. I think what also makes this scene work, and relatively speaking the whole movie, is the color palette. Compare this to Godzilla vs. Kong, where that movie explodes with color. You got light blues, bright greens, violent reds, neon every color. But with Godzilla 2014, you see a lot of grays, a lot of blacks, and a lot of reds and oranges. There's practically almost no color aside from red and orange. And I think because there is a huge lack of color, it brings a lot more of the gloominess of this movie. Also, after Godzilla attacks the Golden Gate Bridge, in my opinion, the movie gets better from here. We get some more kaiju action as well as some Muto screen time. The plot actually moves a little bit faster at a breakneck pace, and we get a great line from Dr. Zarazawa.
Let them fight.
And more Goji, just for good measure. So the boys of war plan to get rid of the bombs that are still at San Francisco Bay. And the only way they can now enter the city is through a halo jump. Ford looks at a picture of his wife and son before the airlock starts to open, so then they can prepare the halo jump. Now, I'm mentioning the halo jump a lot because the advertisements for this movie mentioned the halo jump a lot. Hell, it was even in the posters, so the halo jump must be a really great scene if it's poster-worthy. Yeah, kind of. The best way I could describe the halo jump scene is eerie, which practically speaking is saying a lot because it's just people diving into the city, and yet it still is a really good scene. Like I said before, the lack of color brings in a little bit of gloominess into this movie, and what really works is that there's practically no color aside from the red flares. Also, the music itself makes this scene a little bit more dreadful as well. The music itself brings in a sense of despair and a sense of dread as well. Though me personally, the first half of this scene is okay, but the second half is probably a little bit better, because practically speaking, after we see this really cool shot, we then get some first-person views, and then, once we get to San Francisco, we see more of those first-person point-of-view shots. However, this time, it's the fight between Godzilla and the Muto, and it's actually pretty cool to see this in first person. And what's also cool is that the noises are muffled, meaning you can barely hear anything. And you also got this cool shot of Ford parachuting while Muto is flying past him. So, what do I think of this scene? It's pretty cool, I guess. I mean, I like this scene in and of itself. I think it's pretty cool, but I wouldn't really call it poster-worthy. I don't know, maybe I've just been spoiled, but this scene is just okay in my book. It's not really special. I mean, again, it's cool, but not really poster-worthy cool. Anyways, our boys of war head on to pursuit by foot in the monster-ridden city, and plan to make hot pursuit to find the nuke and disable it before it blows San Francisco to nothing but ash and dust. They find the nuke in Chinatown, but it has turned into a nest for the female Muto to lay her eggs. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this. The female Muto was already pregnant when she came out of the pod and is now laying her eggs along with the nuke. But surely someone somewhere has to stop this madness. Godzilla, Muto. Godzilla, Muto. Godzilla, Muto. Godzilla, Muto. Let them fight. 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 Woo! Yeah, baby, that's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo! Remember when I said Godzilla attacking the Golden Gate Bridge was the best part of the movie? Nah, that was the second best part of the movie. This is the best part of the movie. The fight scene between Godzilla and the Mutos is nothing but pure bliss. It really is just a thing of beauty, but unlike the Hong Kong fight in Godzilla vs. Kong, it's for completely different reasons. Unlike the fight scene in Godzilla vs. Kong, Godzilla 2014's fight scene is a lot more realistic. And by that I mean the monsters don't attack like MMA fighters, but rather like actual animals. They don't slap each other around, they brutalize each other, especially towards Godzilla's end. This is mainly because in the future movies, Godzilla is able to handle himself just fine. Granted, he had a lot more trouble with King Ghidorah, but in Godzilla vs. Kong, he was able to beat Kong twice. And granted, he did have a little trouble with Mechagodzilla. And plus, in both Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla King of the Monsters, he did need a little help from another monster, the former with Kong and the latter with Mothra. But here, not only is Godzilla dealing with two monsters, one that's almost the same size as him and the other who is half the size of him but can fly, but these two combined put the hurt on Godzilla. They brutalize him to actual hell. But I think because the fight scene is more gruesome and brutal, it makes the fight scene even better. You do actually see Godzilla struggle a lot here. And again, it's in tone with the rest of the movie. The movie is dark and realistic, therefore the fight scene must be dark and realistic. So, all in all, I think this is a pretty solid fight scene. But let's go over the problems that it does have. Yes, there are points when the human stuff does interrupt the fight scene. Yes, it can get really annoying, but I don't have a problem with this. I don't know, maybe it's just that I've gotten used to the humans interrupting the fight scenes. I really wouldn't say that the human stuff is bad, it's actually pretty decent as well. And this also leads to some pretty plot-relevant stuff, like when Ford Brody breaks open a truck's tanker to let some gas out, which in turn will end up blowing up the nest, which distracts the female Muto. Which not only will let the other soldiers leave undetected, but in turn will also let the male Muto be distracted as well. And thanks to Ford's little diversion of the Mutos, Godzilla's given ample time to not only get back up, but also do this. It's so beautiful. Look at the color, look at the lighting, it's just so good. Another problem I might as well address about this movie is that it gets too dark. Not tonally, but rather during the fight scene you can barely see anything. I say this because A, it was mostly due to bad DVD transfers when the movie theater version actually looked fine. And B, I'm currently recording this movie via HBO Max and I think that issue was fixed. Which was funny because the first time Godzilla 2014 came to HBO Max, it was even darker. You literally couldn't see see shit even if you tried, but I think they fixed it in the HBO Max version. Which is good, because I can finally appreciate this fight scene for the way it is, being realistic and enjoyable at the same time. And also, it's pretty cool to look at as well. Also, did I forget to mention that this fight scene can be pretty brutal at times? So after killing Muto number 1, Godzilla is then crushed by a building. And after Godzilla's fall, Godzilla finds himself weak and miserable. And thus, after a while, he looks at Ford Brody for the last time, realizing he has failed. However, it's not looking well for Ford, as the female Muto is now ravaging the docks looking for that nuke that was stolen, as well as a very tasty snack along the way, and thus it's up to Ford to get rid of the boat that has the nuke inside before the nuke blows everyone to Kingdom Come. So Ford Brody turns on the boat to make sure it goes away along with the nuke inside, and he almost gets away with this, until the female Muto shows up. Well, this is a sad fine diddle-dee-doo situation Ford has gotten himself into. I wonder how he's gonna get out of it alive. So, after that glorious dose of dopamine, the boat starts to work again. Just so then it, along with the nuke, can go far away from San Francisco. But after the grueling experience, both Ford and Godzilla faint. However, unlike our pal friend Godzilla, Ford is saved by a team of paramedics. And thankfully so, because the bomb blows up far away from the sea, and everything fades to white. We then arrive to the aftermath of the San Francisco Brawl. Godzilla lays lifeless in San Francisco, and everyone who survived the attack tries to find their families. However, Ford is waiting to see his wife so then he and his son can see her once again. But sadly, there is no hope, probably. However, neither is there any hope for Godzilla to wake up as well, as he still lays lifeless until... Meanwhile, at the stadium, the Brody family finally get reunited after the entire chaos ensued. And it is a really nice scene. I mean, after all the chaos ensued, we need something nice to end on. And you know what? It's a nice, happy little ending for the Brody family. It's cute, it's simple, and honestly, I like it. However, there is still one question that is left remaining. What about my boy Goji? He's alive! Yay! So after vanquishing the evil Muto couple, Godzilla walks away from San Francisco triumphantly, whilst everyone watches him from afar, and Godzilla lets off a triumphant roar before heading back to the ocean floor. And that was Godzilla 2014. You can tell why I think this is better than Godzilla vs. Kong. Whilst I do enjoy Godzilla vs. Kong, admittedly speaking, it does miss the human characters that, well, relatively speaking, it most desperately needed. And Godzilla 2014 definitely filled that itch. Most of the actors in this movie do a really good job portraying the characters they're playing, either given small roles or important ones. By far, the best performance of this movie definitely goes to Bryan Cranston. He really gave it his all, even if his character only appeared for a short period of time. Props also go out to Ken Watanabe as Dr. Ishido Zarazawa. Even though he wasn't in it much, he still did a pretty good job. And also the other actors too, they also did a really well done job. And also the kaiju action was really solid as well. Even though there's not a lot of kaiju action, the kaiju action is still good. I'm also glad that Godzilla 2014 kept a consistent tone throughout the whole thing. Well, with the dark and gloomy atmosphere and all that. It really does sell this movie for me, honestly. And even the score ain't half bad either. Granted, it's not Bear McCreary, but it's definitely better than what we got in Godzilla vs. Kong. But my problems with Godzilla 2014 are still there. The main actor is wooden, and, well, frankly, there's just a bunch of boring scenes. And yeah, admittedly speaking, Gareth Edwards does tease a little bit too much. But honestly, despite all of those flaws, I still would recommend Godzilla 2014. That, plus without it, we wouldn't have the entire Rira era. We wouldn't have Shin Godzilla, or the anime trilogy, or King of the Monsters, or vs. Kong, or even Singular Point. Honestly, without Godzilla 2014, we wouldn't have any of these movies. So I do definitely respect Godzilla 2014 for creating a new era of Godzilla films, and as well for bringing in new fans. And honestly, without this film, the timeline for Godzilla would have been very different. Is it a perfect movie? No. The flaws are still there, and they still need to be addressed. However, the good stuff that I did mention is still in there, and it's still pretty good. So overall, I give this movie a 7.5. It's not a perfect movie, but it is an enjoyable one. I'm Xenofilms Productions, and thank you for watching. What the hell? One more time.